I'm sure most of us in this room remember getting highlights and being the highlight of our week. So you're now going to meet the highlights behind the highlights. And the question here is, how do you take a 70-year-old brand that really is iconic and bring it into the 21st century? And here's Kent and Anna to give you their thoughts.
Wow, so have people seen highlights? Yeah? How many first saw it in the doctor's or dentist's office reception room? Wow. All right, so this is the first time I've ever given a talk where we actually have props that look like a reception room. So if you want to go back to that first experience, I'm going to leave this right here. And we can imagine we're doing this in the doctor's and dentist's office. That program started in the late 50s, so we've been there a long time. It's kind of a double-edged sword. And in a sense, everything we're doing here is in response to a problem I face, is that sometimes, you guys are a very kind audience, but sometimes people say, oh, I love highlights. I remember you from the doctor's and dentist's office. Like there's that big warm interaction. And then there's the dagger in my heart. Are you guys still around? Right? Big problem. Big problem for a brand like Highlights that comes from people from time to time. So a lot of what we're talking about with respect to going to mobile, all the things we're doing in the business, if you said, what is my one challenge as the CEO of this company for the next 10 years, is to have people go from saying, I remember you from the doctor's and dentist's office, I love Highlights, to say, I love Highlights in all the places you are. I love your preschool magazine, I love your baby magazine, I love what you're doing at mobile. It's so cool that you're all over the world. I not only subscribe to your products, but my family is a Highlights family. So I want people to subscribe to our philosophy and our beliefs and our values, and then choose whatever products they want across our portfolio. So, you know, I will tell you a little bit about the history of the company, and then my main objective is to speak less and make sure Anna describes what we're doing. Our company was really founded first on a belief. We believe that children are the world's most important people. So we have that on the walls of our office. We try to live that belief. My job as CEO is to expand on how we deliver on our mission. And our mission is to help children become their best selves. So what we talk about the 4 C's. So what we mean by having children become their best selves is to become creative, caring, confident, and curious. So a very whole child concept in terms of the educational, the development opportunities. I want to talk about these numbers. Go back one. So actually, I'm not going to talk about the numbers. What I want you to do is, in the theme of RJ, these numbers, and for me, I'm a numbers guy, I love numbers, like look through your AR and see bursting to you whatever your visualization of love is. Because the way these numbers get big, you know, being the sort of large for a long time, being able to engage the emotion of our readers, of our families, it's all about the love that our content producers, that our company has for children and families, but also the love that we experience from our subscribers is what allows us to continue. I mean, ultimately, we have a ridiculously dumb business model, right? We sell magazines to people who grow out of them, and we have no advertising revenue. Like, ask anyone in the publishing industry. It can't work, right? It just can't work as a business model, and yet it does because we've been doing it for so long. Let's go to the next slide. So, you know, a little walk through history. We were started, I would say, as an act of love. In the lower left, you can see the founders with their grandchildren. So they actually started the company, and just brief history, they started at the end of their careers. So they were 61 and 59. They threw everything they had into this crazy idea of creating a magazine. They'd been involved in parenting. They published a lot of academic books on educational psychology and child development. They had traveled the country addressing teachers. They had a syndicated radio show, newspaper column. And what they decided to do is they wanted to find a way to create experiences for kids that embodied their belief and philosophy around children. They decided at the time to start it as a magazine. From the beginning, and I have to say this about once a week in my company, we're not a magazine company. So ignore the magazines, look across the top. The theme that I see across the years there is the experiences we're trying to create for children. So the essential piece and why we reached out to Fingerprint and what we're going to talk about is how we tried to say, what are the experiences we've tried to create with a magazine? How can we create similarly high-quality experiences, similar goals on the mobile device. We did just one quick, the business was rocky at the start, but in 2006 we got to celebrate the printing and delivery of the 1 billionth copy of highlights. Kind of cool, like it gets a lot of attention to talk about big numbers. Obviously now that we're in digital, everybody's got bigger numbers than that, but in a physical object, that's kind of a nice number. What it did is it gave us an opportunity to remind people we don't count customers the way advertising-driven publications do. We have readers and we have an audience that counts to us. So every opportunity we used in that PR effort to talk about what we're achieving with each magazine that we deliver to a home, with each mobile experience, with each product we create. So Highlights does a little bit more than magazines. Over the years, we've developed a lot of what we call continuity book clubs. So these are some of the brands. The model there is it's typically a consumable, puzzle-based activity. Everything we do is under the tagline and under the philosophy of fun with a purpose. But what it means is we've been working in a business model for monthly recurring billing, kind of till you tell us to stop, satisfaction guaranteed business models, for a long time. Everyone knows us for our magazine. We now actually have 4 magazines. We did the craziest thing ever. We launched a magazine for babies, which is printed on synthetic paper, so you can hop in the bathtub and read it or put it in your dishwasher. But essentially, the key point here is even though people think of us as Highlights Magazine, we've got about 500,000 customers starting in these physical monthly shipments each year. So these are pretty important business to us as well as a pretty important touch point. I want to mention one number that's not up there. We've since 1946, we've answered or responded to every piece of communication we've received from a child. So if they ask us about a problem with their friends or they send us a drawing, we always write back. So I don't like the video, don't go viral. We are like the pen pal that won't stop. Like kids can keep writing to us. And I think that, in addition to our connection with the reception rooms and the classroom, kind of that kind of engagement over an extended period of time is, we don't ask what's the return on that investment. We just do it because that's the polite thing to do. And we get about 50,000 pieces of communication a year from kids. And obviously, I'm not dwelling on the marketing, but we have a lot of touch points in our marketing for our print products. We're in just about every variety of direct response marketing anyone's ever invented, and are delivering about 2 million magazine copies per month to the homes. All right, there's really nothing to say here. You guys all know this. I guess the one thing I'll add in the perspective from Highlights perspective, we've had, I don't know if we could make a profit from the number of people who've told me how slow we are to get involved in digital, like we'd have no bottom line problem. But our point of view has been this, yes, things are moving quickly in digital. Yes, we want to be very thoughtful in what we want to do, but we want to make sure before we start rushing, because you have to rush in digital, that we have a good set of ideas and we put the things in place to be successful. And a lot of what we'll talk about is kind of our trying to put things in place so we can be proud of what we do. I love the way Clark said, you want to be there when the parent opens it, and you want to be proud of that moment. That was a great concept. Do I get to hand it off yet? Not yet. Okay. Oh, no, yeah. One point. And then Anna maybe will say something smarter than what I have to say. We love grandparents. Like, we literally love grandparents. This is the RJ Love talk. We love grandparents. We love teachers. The incredible thing for us is a huge amount of our orders and the sort of connection to grandparents who maybe grew up subscribing or had highlights for their kids. We have great support from grandparents, and what's been fun is even as early on we saw the incredible shift to digital in terms of communication preferences, is we see and are excited about the sort of continued increase of engagement of the grandparent demographic with digital. And then we think it's an important piece of our strategy in going digital.
Thanks, Kent. So I'm Anna Barber from Fingerprint Digital, and we've partnered with Highlights to launch some great new subscription products. And let me just say before I start that my own personal play credentials are stellar. In a previous career, I co-founded the U.S. Air Guitar Championships. And so adult play. I was talking to some people about that last night, so just wanted to share that tidbit, and if you want to talk to me about it later, you can. It's been a real honor and a privilege to work with Kent and the Highlights team on a personal level. This is a strong brand, it's a great brand, and we've had so much fun doing this. So, as Kent said, part of the audience here is grandparents, and they're very engaged. I was amazed to see that 75% of grandparents have downloaded an app. So picking up, actually, this is a great segue from Clark's conversation about business models in the kids' app store. So this is actually directly maps to some of the data that Clark shared. And as we were thinking about what to do for Highlights, which is, of course, a subscription-based company, this data was very relevant. So you can actually see Animal Jams there at number 5. This is from sometime last week. So what we've done is boxed the subscription apps here. And as Clark pointed out, these numbers in terms of App Store revenue don't translate into very large numbers when you're thinking just about direct App Store revenue. However, some of these do translate into rather big businesses because a lot of these products also have a web-based subscription that is, of course, circumventing the App Store. So for example, the top 2, ABC Mouse and Epic, you can also subscribe to on the web, and that is part of our strategy. I also had to go down to the top 30 so I could capture our 2 products that we've launched in the last 6 months, so you can see Highlights, Hidden Pictures, and Highlights every day down there on the bottom row. So as we were thinking about Highlights and how to bring Highlights into mobile, it was obvious that subscription was the way to go, simply because it's in the DNA of the company. It's something that we know is tried and true in the App Store, and it seemed to really fit what we wanted to do. So, as Kent was alluding to, when we first started speaking to Highlights, we realized that they were just absolutely perfectly positioned to sort of take advantage of what was going on in the market. They touch almost every household, if not every household in the US and also many around the world. It's an enormous brand, and I think as Kent pointed out, as Clark pointed out, one of the secrets to success in the App Store is having a known, recognizable brand. They have an amazing library of content that is also incredibly well organized, and I have to say that's a really important factor in projects like this, being able to actually access the content. And we think that adds up to the foundation for a great business.
Yeah, I think I'll let Anna talk about this. I think one of the things that I've realized, I don't have much of a business background, but I've learned, I don't ever want to get into anything in a business context that's a fair fight. So we only try to do things with our business where we have some sort of competitive advantage with the brand, with the content, with the history. And we really only want to do things that our customers would say, oh, of course Highlights should be doing that. So I like to say if we have a business plan, we should be able to tell everyone what it is, because no one else should be able to actualize on our business plan if it's a good business plan for us. So the key idea here, the key shift in our strategy happened a couple years ago to say, we really want to do something that has that surprise and delight, that has magic for kids in the digital space, and we're willing to have the humility to admit, which is sometimes hard for publishers, that we should not do all of it ourselves, that we had to find the right partners to be able to have enough of a competitive advantage to go forward. So this process started, we sort of made that shift in our decision, spent a fair bit of time kind of getting to know people, in the dating phase with Fingerprint. But really the idea is it's got to have the advantage of the Highlights brand, all the content, and unlike many publishers who work with authors and illustrators, all the content we publish in our magazines is all rights. So we own all of it, which gives us a vast library to use both to adapt to digital, but also to inspire new digital content. And we have invested a lot of time and money into organizing it into a good digital asset management system. But we had to find a team like Anna's and Nancy at Fingerprint that had existing technology. So we didn't want to have you build everything from scratch, but also incredible capabilities around technology development and around kids in the mobile digital space.
So yeah, a little bit more about Fingerprint. We are 31 people in San Francisco, and Highlights is how many people? Or a lot more. A lot more in Columbus and Pennsylvania. Some of our other partners are Samsung, DreamWorks, and Chorus. And what we do is we build mobile platforms in the kids space for content distribution. So obviously some cultural differences here that we had to think about as we went into this partnership. So what we spent a lot of time up front trying to figure out what we were doing and making sure we had a shared vision. So for example, we sent a team of people to Honesdale, Pennsylvania from our group to kind of marinate in Highlights culture and really understand the brand. We had to develop a high degree of trust. Highlights has entrusted us with their brand. And so it took a lot of time and a lot of work to sort of develop that level of close working together. You know, one of my professors used to say joint ventures never work. So when and I don't believe that. I believe in, you know, you can make them work. You can do things like this successfully if you have a high degree of trust and a shared vision. We had to put dedicated people on both sides, you know, that were full-time working on this, and then sort of decide who was going to do what. There was a lot of back and forth about that because we're running a live ops business. This wasn't just building a product and putting it out to market. There's ongoing work we're doing every day, and flying, lots of frequent flyer miles.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about Highlights that's somewhat interesting is from the beginning, we've actually been structured where our product development group is based in Northeast Pennsylvania, and our business functions are in Columbus, Ohio. So it's one of the ways to keep the business folks from messing with your editorial team. It turns out, like, that was all well and good when you drove the magazine across back roads once a month, but as we've tried to accelerate and work better with our own internal teams, and then adding how do we adapt as a 70-year-old publisher to try to shake the cobwebs out of our approaches to things, to work with a sort of Silicon Valley startup San Francisco team. It's been a fun ride. I think, like Colin said, you really want to make sure you're aligned on the mission, because when things get messy, like knowing where you're trying to go is really the only way to get through the messiness.
So this is a model of sort of the business and technology that vision that we have for Highlights, which is really cross-selling across all the platforms. You know, as Kent said, he wants people to think about this brand in all its different places. So we're envisioning a world where kids, customers are able to know the Highlights brand in all of these different media, and where that's supported by a content management system, by single sign-on, by shared services, by shared account data. So we know who those customers are as well across all those different products and platforms. And we've started to actually launch those products with our first 2 subscription products in the App Store. So as we were going into this, as I said, we had to, there were some core questions we had to look at. First of all, Highlights didn't come in with a clear vision of what products they wanted to launch. So we had to think there's so many different ways we could go. Highlights spans ages 0 to 12, so we had to figure out what age target and which product to go with. We ultimately decided to go with the sort of digital analog to their core magazine, which is the Highlights magazine, the iconic product. Then we had to think about, you know, what's the thing that works really well in mobile that's core to the Highlights brand that we know we need to do, and we really pretty quickly landed on puzzling. Puzzling is a big part of the Highlights experience, which is really dedicated to, I would say, sort of open-ended play as learning. The hidden pictures puzzle is probably the iconic Highlights experience. I'm sure you all know what that is. So we knew we had to have puzzling in there. Then we had to think about what is there about this brand and the content that we absolutely can't touch. So for example, Highlights would never show kids being snarky. Highlights would never show kids being disrespectful to adults. And Highlights would never talk down to kids. So those are 3 principles. You would see that kind of interaction with other brands, but for Highlights, that just wouldn't work. So we knew we had to stay in that kind of lane. And then where do we have more room to expand and do something new and different? So we did video. Highlights has never done a lot of video. We actually created 4 different series of original videos based on Highlights content, which I think turned out really well, and I think will be, you know, a new anchor for Highlights going forward. And we also did interactive quizzes, which is something new and different that Highlights hadn't done before. And then we had to decide, are we looking for new customers, or are we really trying to stay within the Highlights family and kind of cross-sell to those customers? And we ultimately decided our first goal was to try to reach a new customer base that might not be familiar with Highlights, that might in fact think that Highlights was no longer around, by getting to them in the mobile channel.
And along the way, I always like to drive them crazy when they present me with "or" questions. because I just say yes. So the business has to rely on both, of course.
No, it's great. So this is a little bit of what we went through. This was just sort of a fun infographic we put together for an internal meeting. You know, how many team members, how many hidden objects are in the products that we created. You know, you can read it, etc. I just want to point out one thing, which is 5 activities delivered every day in the upper right corner. So one thing we think is really distinctive about this main product we've launched is that it's delivering new content every day. We're trying to go after that mailbox moment, you know, where the kid gets the magazine in the mail, and think about what the digital equivalent to that is. So we think that's really important. Another thing I just want to point out is assets in the highlights DAMs, which is, of course, the digital asset management system. So we had an overwhelming amount of content that we had to sift through in order to program and create the editorial calendar for this new subscription product. And
Coming to you live with a special report. This is Highlights Every Day.
Hi, and welcome to Highlights Every Day. I'm Allison, and with me as always is Socrates. In what could possibly be the most important development in all of my 8 years, they have hundreds of articles on everything from insects to furry animals to how stars blow up. All the crazy quizzes get me to answer life's most important questions, like, which animal are you? Definitely a fierce lion. All the fun puzzles keep me on the hunt for new items. Nothing gets by me in the circus puzzle, though Socrates lends a hand once in a while. With hundreds of all new videos that make learning so much fun, I come back all the time. And with 5 new activities added every day, I can wake up to something new from Highlights every day. Oh, this just in. Time for breakfast.
Wake up to something new from Highlights Every Day. Download at Google Play and the App Store today.
thank you.
Let's stop.
Right. So that just shows you a little bit about what's inside the product. We didn't have a product demo, so we just thought we'd throw the commercial up there. So we've launched 2 products. The first one we launched in December, which is actually just a hidden pictures puzzling app. It's a monthly subscription. It's $2.99 a month, and it just has hidden pictures. And the other one is this Highlights Every Day, which we just showed you the video for. So the idea is to lead with hidden pictures, which I said is really like the anchor for the brand. People know what that is. It's understandable. And then to follow with this bigger kind of master product, which has the entire Highlights experience in it. So, you know, we're still very new into this. This is a very a brand new product, just got to the market. We're still trying to figure things out. So we thought we would share some of the things that we're asking ourselves now. We're 8 weeks after launch of Highlights Every Day. We're about 4 months after Hidden Pictures, so we're still very early stages. So these are some of the things that we're thinking about. The first one is, how do we market these products alongside the magazines? I put up here a comment that you probably can't read from the App Store. This was actually on the Hidden Pictures app, and it's someone saying, I'm already a subscriber to Highlights Magazine. Why do I have to pay for this app? So some users, not all, expect that because they're already in the Highlights family, that anything that Highlights does in the mobile subscription world should also be free. So we're thinking about things like bundled subscriptions, you know, what do customers expect? We certainly don't want to alienate the existing valuable print customer base. And we're also thinking, or we have thought a little bit about cannibalization, although I believe we've been instructed not to think about that.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting when you run an organization and people have responsibility for a P&L. They don't want other people within the organization screwing with their P&L. And it's in a sense, I have to do everything I can to try to dispel that thinking, because obviously if someone's going to cannibalize one of our core products, it should be us rather than somebody else. But I think also from a product perspective, it really can limit the sort of imagination and the sort of creativity if the product developers have in their mind, how will this affect something else? So you might want them to think about the relationship, but what we really ask the group to do with Highlights Every Day is, let's just imagine we take the brand philosophy, the brand assets, our beliefs, and try to make the absolute best mobile experience for that core age demographic, and then let the chips kind of fall where they may. I think the frustrating thing is the only way for us, and you saw the numbers from Clark, and I believe those numbers, but the only way for us to be able to make great new content to be pushing 5 units of content every day is to have a subscription model. So, the content costs money to create. So we have to figure out how do we communicate to our customers that this is a separate and sufficiently different product to generate the revenue that allows content creation of the quality they expect.
Related point is really trying to hone in on that product market fit. With this product in particular, once people get it and get into it and see what it is, they love it. The engagement and retention numbers so far, 6 weeks, but so far have been amazing. But we're having trouble honing in on what is that sort of marketing soundbite that's going to get people into the product. So as an example, we're not a progressive learning path like an ABC mouse. We're not going to promise to raise your kids' reading scores. Nor are we just a clear kid-driven purchase, at like a game like Animal Jam that a kid might say, hey, I want to download this. We're with this sort of hybrid where the kids like it, they enjoy it, the parents think it's good for you, but between entertainment and education and really play, the Highlights experience is really about open-ended play and asking kids to think and be creative. And we're having trouble boiling that down to a soundbite, for example, like in our Facebook advertising. So that's something we're working on.
And it's, this is really an ongoing struggle across all our brand products. So everything we do, we talk about as fun with a purpose, but when we talk to our customers, the parents really care about that purpose, but it's not top of mind for the kid. So where we want to live, the space we want to live is that the parent has that trust and they're encouraging, but that's never enough, right? If the kid doesn't love it as an experience, you're done. So, and it's a fine line. We also, we do have a couple companies that serve the education market, so we separately make curriculum, we do teacher training. We're always very wary of moving the Highlights brand into a too educational kind of context because we want the kids to love the play and enjoy like their experience of flow and their development, but not think about it as with the negative connotations some kids would associate with education. So we're trying to walk that fine line and figure out how do you convey that in a short Facebook ad? Or how do you communicate that in an email or a video or any sort of marketing message?
Yeah, that's right. And I think, the related point is parents resonate with the brand and what the brand's about, but does that translate into purchase intent, when you're at that moment of making that purchase? So we're trying to work on that and refine that message. And then, another question we have is about, like a lot of people have discussed here, digital is really a way into experiences in the home. And that's particularly true for Highlights. And I'll just give one example. One of the features we have in here is it's a reading feature called Brain Play. And it's really just open-ended questions like, if you were the president, what's the first thing you would do? Or what are 8 things you could do with this box? And there are no answers given. So what these questions are meant to do is really spark conversations around the dinner table. So we can see what kids are doing in the app, and actually here's what they're doing. Puzzles is, the predominantly most popular activity, followed by quizzes, video, and reading. And reading isn't the biggest, but it does get some play in there. These are some of the top individual activities. The top is this puzzle, and the next one is this which wild animal are you quiz, which was shown in the video. So we can see that. We can see in-app engagement, but we can't see the conversations that they're having around the dinner table.
Yeah, I think, and this is sort of that's been the problem since the beginning with the magazine, right? You can't even tell what people are reading. But, my editor-in-chief likes to say, we were interactive before interactive was cool. With the open-ended brain play, and I'll have something else to say about that in a second. But, for instance, in the jokes, like we believe it is hugely important in a child's development to play with humor, to develop their sense of humor. So do I want kids just passively watching these jokes and laughing? Like, that's actually not that interesting to our company and to what's going on. Would a child, now they're not reading a joke in a magazine and then maybe telling it to their friends, will they now emulate the performance of telling a joke? Will they take that joke to their parents? Will they take it to their siblings? Like those things that we care most about, we can't actually measure. So we have this incredible explosion of data, and we love data, but some of the most important stuff to us we can't see quantitatively through the digital experience. Since we're at MIT and we have a minute, one quick thing on brain play. A couple researchers associated with MIT actually wrote a paper. They analyzed the informational content in our whole library of brain play questions from start to beginning and proposed it as the best set of questions to test artificial intelligence algorithms. Precisely because of these open-ended. Now, there have not been any algorithms that have gone against it yet, so we're hoping when that paper gets published or gets some traction that, because really, and again, it goes to that idea, we don't talk down to kids. We will ask, we've talked to many philosophers who've come upon our brain play questions, so do you guys know what you're doing here? And I think we don't really understand philosophy as deeply as we should, or artificial intelligence. But from the beginning, the idea of brain play was no matter what age a kid is, they are capable of incredibly deep thinking processes. So why wouldn't we ask an essential fundamental question of a 5-year-old? Why would we wait till they're 12? Let's start early with the kind of conversations that children are really capable of. And if we can get that happening in a mobile experience, we will have been successful.
Yeah, and that's just one example. I mean, brain play is one of 30 things that are in this app. How do you surface that and let people know what's in there? There's so much depth here to the content. It can be a little overwhelming, in fact, but we think it's a really exciting product. So that's all we had. I don't know. We have a couple minutes for questions, I think. Yeah.
Make the cut? Are they still around?
Are they still around? That's a great question. We really wanted to do justice to Goofus and Gallant. Not yet. Not yet, but actually we have some character studies on Goofus and Gallant, and they will be in there. We really wanted to do justice to Goofus and Gallant because they're so special and they're so iconic, and we didn't feel like we could get the storyline right in time for launch, so not yet.
Yeah, I mean, Goofus and Gallant, we once did a web app, in our website, where kids, got to choose, they're presented scenarios. They could choose Goofus or choose Gallant. And, everyone's like, this is great. We're helping kids become, the social emotional development. And, 92% were like, Goofus, 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 Goofus. So the editors were discouraged, and I said, look, there is a room to poke fun and kind of think about Goofus and Gallant as being a little bit didactic. What our main purpose there is, can we create a conversation? Can we create some engagement with the ideas of right and wrong? And so I think that's absolutely something we want to get into the mobile space, and I think we just want to do it right. But I can tell you, my 9-year-old came to me and said, Dad, Goofus this week, he's leaning back in his chair, and you've been telling me you're not supposed to lean back at your chair in the dinner table. And I said, well, are you going to stop? And he said, well, no. But we had a conversation.
Quick question. Wanted to know if there are any things on the forefront of English language development that you're working with.
That's like a plant. So, it's another way is that you sort of say, both from our mission perspective and just an understanding of the sort of massive demographic shift taking place in our country, as well as the problems around English language or the challenges and opportunities with English language learners being such a high proportion of kids in schools. We actually did launch a bilingual or dual language preschool magazine recently, and we're working with Ed and HITN to sort of try to find ways to access classrooms, to access communities and reach, kind of a broader audience. And I think it's not just about helping maybe native Spanish speakers become proficient in English, but this idea that, and we did see a little bit yesterday briefly, why aren't we as a country starting children at a young age thinking and working in multiple languages? It puts us at a pretty significant disadvantage internationally, and when I travel and work with our partners around the world, it is a constant embarrassment to me that I, with my 4 years of Latin, have no other spoken language, besides English. So we are working in that space. We haven't quite figured out in this particular mobile app, like where will we bring that in? But again, it's a piece where our digital asset management system, trying to have that filled with all of those assets, not only in English, but over time as we translate them into other languages, so we can create great experiences reaching all around the world. I should also say, you know, we're pretty excited about Spanish, but we're really excited about Mandarin. So we did about 1 million units of hidden pictures in China last year in physical product, in English, in Mandarin, in English and Mandarin together. So, you know, you really have to look at this world. If you care about children, it turns out there are more of them born outside the United States than in the United States. And that's what I said to my board when I said I want to hire all these people to start an international business. There are a lot of kids there. We should do this.
So I'm curious about this idea of broccoli and pudding. Is the metaphor that we had at our at Nature, our company, this idea of which is the learning part and which is the quote play and fun. And I really appreciate the sort of, you know, curious and confident and all of the things you're talking about. There seems to be a very interesting cultural barrier that we're having to break through, and finding the metaphor of this play is learning, and, you know, is it entertainment or is it educational? And I'm really just wondering why we're still having them so far away from each other. You know, if the kid finds out that it's quote as educational, have you poisoned them? You know, how does it make it seem like it's not broccoli? You know, or I just wanted a little thought from you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this, I think that's a great question. I think in this product, one of the ways we're doing that is, you know, it's really open-ended, and, you know, it's just sort of open exploration. You can go wherever you want. As that chart showed, kids are playing the puzzles, right? That's what they gravitate to. But they will engage with the other stuff. If they go into the reading content, you know, they're learning a lot of that. Most of that content is science content. It's social studies. It's human interest. But it's a very light touch. You know, this isn't leveled reading. It's not progressive. It's just meant to be kind of fun, open-ended play. The quizzes are a great example. So a lot of the quizzes are knowledge quizzes. If you don't know the answer as you're going through the quiz, you're learning the answer. But kids will play the quizzes as a game. So they'll go through and try to answer all the answers wrong so they can see what it says at the end, because there are these funny little things that tell you didn't do very well, but kind of in a nice way. So they'll go through until they actually learn the information. So we're definitely not pitching this as educational. You know, it's fun with a purpose, and hopefully, but it is educational, right?
I mean, you know, we have a lot of debates internally about the metaphor of chocolate on broccoli, and fundamentally, we're not trying to trick kids to get to eat the broccoli. But I do think, you know, in addition to seeing the data about what kids are doing in aggregate, you also care about the correlations. So one of the things, you might have a kid, like I was a kid who loved to blow things up. But I might be reading the science article or the thing I'm interested in, and I might stray into another area, just like you might click on a story when really your primary interest is video. So how do you allow a kid to have a time-dependent exploration where they may not want all of it at one time, but you want them to stumble upon it and have new experiences they wouldn't otherwise have? And you know, you don't want them to think of it as educational, but if they stumble on it at the right time, you might inspire them to like that new content area. So we talk about that kind of thing a lot.
I think I'm next. I used to be the magazine research director at Sesame Street when we published 4 magazines or 5, and of course that was gone, you know, because magazines were gone. So I'm thrilled to hear you say this. I'm curious about 2 things. One is the total wholesomeness of what you're aiming at. It's so contrary to a lot of market things out there for kids. So I mean, how you hold true to that is very interesting to me. There's kind of a moral dimension, whatever you call it, that is at the core. And the second thing is, I'm interested in your grandparent demographic, because it's huge. And I'm curious how you see that marketing, since you're still figuring out your marketing. How do you market to them as opposed to marketing to the normal parent and so on?
Yeah, I mean, to answer your first question first, I mean, you know, we embrace wholesome, we embrace the values we stand for. We hope people don't refer to us as old-fashioned, because we don't want to live in a world where wholesome and good, positive kind of values are considered old-fashioned. We think those are the values for the 21st century, and the only way we're going to figure out how to coexist on this planet is if people will buy into these values and how we raise our children. So, there's not much discussion about it. That's just sort of at our core. In terms of grandparents, we do a lot of direct response where we can, we use consumer data about grandparents buying gifts for kids in different addresses. I think we have a lot to learn. I think there's a lot to be learned about how you connect digitally to grandparents, whether it's around the gifting of a physical product or about getting them engaged in a mobile app. Grandparents tend to look out for the quality of upbringing their grandchildren have. Sometimes they're suspicious of their own children and their skill at parenting. And we would not explicitly sell to that, but we certainly like when they step in and get some educational products for those grandkids. I don't know.
Speaking of grandparents, given the basis of Highlights as a company, what you found out about senior citizens' facility with technology, has there been any discussion, and what we know about the importance of continuing brain activity as you get older, any discussion of developing Highlights for seniors?
Well, we did launch our first product we call a coloring book this past fall, which was, we called it a coloring book for grown-up children. And it did pretty well at retail. I guess coloring's a big thing, and I learned about that. We get a lot of inquiries over the years of parents, people who have a loved one in an assisted living or in some kind of progressive decline and that do use our products. I'm not convinced that the research says that really brings value, and I don't really know how to sell into that market. So we just try to make our products as broadly available, and we're watching and listening when people talk to us about that.
Thanks. I feel that I'm a grown-up kid, my wife says all the time. It's kind of a pain. So my question actually is sort of linking two of the panelists here. Michelle, I believe from IDEO, hope I'm saying that right, mentioned that they had to think about the form factor as it shaped the content delivery and the experience. And I see a noble and really incredible effort to take sort of physical edited magazine content into a digital place. Are there conversations underway to push those boundaries into games, or where is that line that you guys have drawn, and maybe are you evolving over time?
So when we thought about the product, I was actually thinking about this yesterday when we were thinking about the different types of learners, and within Highlights Every Day, we have reading content that has audio overlay, we have video, and we have simple puzzle games. Absolutely. So that's what we have right now. We're covering, much broader array of interactive types that is possible in print. Those were, because this is an authoring tool-driven system, in that we need to be able to rapidly suck in a lot of content in order to serve that 5 a day. We've got over 500 pieces of content live in the product now, and we're constantly adding to that. So we have to be in rapid production mode. But we have looked at everything from platformer style games to lighter interactive time-based games to different types of puzzles. So we're looking at a lot of different game engines that we can bring in to create different play patterns. We've also looked at things like VR, like print, print magazine interaction, so that if you have the magazine, you can make something come to life in the app. So there's a lot we have in the technology roadmap that we want to do, and we're just not there yet.
I'd say we're always trying to push things. We're as long as it's consistent with our values and our mission, and I'm obsessively curious. Like, I see these talks, I'm like, I don't want to think about my talk. I want to think about what they said, and does that create some new ideas for us? So, that was really cool stuff, and I just bought my Apple TV a few weeks ago because we got to figure out what is Highlights on the Apple TV. I don't know yet. If we'll take ideas. Like, we're pretty humble. Like, we're trying something. Like, if you have good ideas for us and you don't want to charge us for them, like, talk to me. We will buy the coffee.
Lots of coffee. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.